I'm with Raise Your Hand Texas. Thank you for joining us this morning for this very important press conference event. We are here to share with you some exciting news about the federal stimulus funding that will benefit Texas schools and to talk about what is next. Beginning our comments this morning is Senator Royce West. Senator West?
I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. And I'm not talking about guns today, all right? But I'm talking about weapons. I'm talking about weapons that we need to be concentrating on in Austin as opposed to being concentrating on guns. Weapons for the future. That's our children. I get sick and tired of hearing politicians talk about it's all about school, it's all about making certain we prepare for the next generation, but yet and still, there's always, frankly, what I believe is unnecessary deliberation as it relates to making certain that schools have the necessary resources in order to develop the weapons for tomorrow. There's not enough participation. My families, we have children attending school and making certain that Austin and yes, Washington and here locally that we provide the resources that are necessary. All of us understand and appreciate that we've been through a pandemic and hopefully we're on the other side of it. And we know that our children across the country, not just here in Dallas, need to make up some ground. But yet and still we have heretofore not provided the resources. But this week, monies were released. In Dallas's portion, I know the superintendent will talk to you about, is over $380 million with another $180 million that should be coming from, realistically, this tranche of money. But there's still $5 billion that's on the table. Now, don't get me wrong. I want to make certain that we have a check and balance system in place in order to make certain the dollars get to the place that they need to, and we don't have buyer's remorse in Dallas or any other school district as it relates to monies going into the wrong pockets. But I urge the governor to continue to do what he's doing, the speaker and the lieutenant governor. We've got to make certain that $5 billion, that we have the maintenance of effort that's necessary in order to get the dollars to the schools. And Superintendent Hinojosa, I know you and the board, Justin, Mr. President, will be a fiduciary of this money, make certain it goes where it's supposed to go, and that it benefits our children, and that the ultimate result will we will be able to weaponize America through education in the future.
Thank you, Senator West, and I'll be back to you in a second. But first of all, I want to thank our educators, our teachers who have done an outstanding job under these very trying conditions. And we really want to thank them for their leadership. 3 specific areas. First was safety. And we had to get the kids safe and the teachers safely back to school. And we moved mountains to make it happen. And secondly, we were then terrified with this learning loss. And so everybody then started working on instruction. And instruction was difficult. Many of our teachers were teaching kids in person and virtually. And that was a heavy lift. But they didn't complain about it because they knew that we had to take care of all of God's children. And so they really stepped up to do it. So we're very proud of them. But now also, as we start getting our families back, the relationships are going to be very important. The mental health of some of our families, some of our students, and some of our adults have been tried and fried. And so we need to make sure we have a way to connect with them. But back to Senator West. Several months ago, I came to Senator West. And he has meeting in his district with all of the superintendents. And we all spoke up that we knew that thanks to the new administration, there were a lot of federal dollars coming down. And that we had a little, the bathtub was clogged up. The stuff wasn't getting through. And Senator West said, okay, got it. Are you sure you're telling me the truth, Hinojosa? I said, yes, sir, Senator. And so he started working with people to make this happen. And so luckily, now we're here and we're grateful. We're grateful for the leadership of the state to have unclogged the drain. And now we start getting, we get a portion. We get 2/3 of the dollars. And we're grateful because we have to do a lot of things. We know there's going to be a funding cliff in 3 years. So we can't hire people in perpetuity. But we got to start staffing up of how we're going to do summer differently. How are we going to do after school differently for our kids that are struggling the most? How are we going to reinvent the whole instructional program? Because now that we've been stretched, we don't want that rubber band to go back. Because there are some things we learned for some students during this pandemic that are different for us, especially us traditional educators. And so, but these cost money. And I do thank the leadership in Washington who helped make this happen for us. And we've gotten 2/3. We're going to get 2/3 of our money right now. But this is like a 3-year spend, 2.5-year spend, and we have to be smart and we have to be accountable. And yes, we need to be a fiduciary of these resources for our families. But it also gives us an opportunity to do things differently and provide things for our families that they desperately need. But the most important thing is their academic achievement. And we know we will be held accountable for that, and we look forward to being held accountable for that. Para las familias que no hablan inglés, agradecemos que el Estado nos está cooperando con nosotros con los dineros que vienen de los federales. Agradecemos el apoyo, hay mucho que hacer con nuestras familias y nuestros estudiantes, pero en este momento estamos aquí para dar gracias a todos, porque esta semana fue la semana cuando nos dieron los dineros para poder sobrevivir en los meses que vienen. So I will wrap up there and say, I was once a superintendent in a different district, and I had an assistant superintendent that kept telling all the teachers, you're going to have the best laptop ever. The only problem, he told them that for a year. So when they finally got their laptop, instead of saying thank you, they said, it's about time. So I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy. I do want to say thank you, but also it's going to have a big impact on this state, and we need everybody to work together. And speaking of work together, we've had some great partners from the Dallas Regional Chamber and also North Texas Commission and everybody else in the business community who's really helped speak this voice. And of course, Raise Your Hand Texas has always been at the forefront, and we thank them for their leadership. So now I think we're going to hear from our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator West and Dr. Hinojosa. We are so fortunate to have the two of you as the champion of our students and our future workforce. Good morning, everyone. I'm Michelle Vopney. I'm the EY Dallas office managing partner, but more importantly, I have the privilege of being the 2021 board chair for the Dallas Regional Chamber. The Dallas Regional Chamber has been a longtime advocate of public education. We know that the long-term success of our regional economy is dependent on our ability and the ability of our educational institutions to train and educate our young people so they are well prepared to handle the jobs needed to be done in our growing region. The North Texas business community has a vested interest in supporting our public schools with the resources they need to prepare every student for college and for career success. For that reason, the Dallas Regional Chamber, alongside of 26 chambers of commerce and business associations throughout the state of Texas, joined together earlier this month to advocate for the release of the nearly $18 billion in federal funds dedicated to public education. In that letter, the DRC and our partners stressed the urgent needs of our school districts, many of which have experienced severe student learning loss and incurred unexpected costs during this pandemic. Today, the DRC joined Senator West, Dr. Hinojosa, and DISD Board President Justin Henry in celebrating and thanking Governor Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, Speaker Phelan, and Commissioner Morath for unlocking significant federal funds for our Texas schools. This funding will provide immediate support for school districts to accelerate academic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, which has had an unprecedented impact on North Texas public schools. Since last March, hundreds of thousands of students in our region have experienced significant learning disruptions as schools closed and transitioned to online learning. While the end of the pandemic may be on the horizon, these learning disruptions threaten to slow or reverse the progress the students have been making. In particular, the students in Dallas ISD, which have been having so many great momentums and great changes and improvements over the last several years. The newly approved federal aid will be transformational for all North Texas schools. This funding will enable our education systems to cover the unexpected costs related to the pandemic, provide supplemental summer learning, and prepare targeted programs to curb learning loss this fall. This support could not have come at a better time. Since the start of the pandemic, the number of economic development projects for people looking to move into this region has doubled since pre-pandemic times. Many of the reasons that employers want to come to North Texas is because of the wonderful public education infrastructure that we all get to enjoy, and that is a key factor in their decision-making. To meet the needs of North Texas' growing business community, we must continue investing in our public schools. By unlocking these funds, state leaders have ensured that Texas will continue to build our momentum in education from the last legislative session and ensure our economy remains resilient and robust for generations to come. This is a great step to support Texas public schools, and we look forward to see the remaining federal funds distributed as soon as possible. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
First, I want to say thank you for everyone that's organized this event. Before I get started with my prepared statements, I just want to acknowledge as we stand in this school, our educators and our staff and our administrators that have worked tremendously hard in a very difficult time. As a trustee, I hear their stories anecdotally via a lot of different vehicles, but also as a parent at drop-off and Zoom meetings. I've seen how digitally they've been the past year. So as we talk about these monies, at the end of the day, it's our educators, our staff, our support staff, and our administrators that are really working in the most difficult year that I've seen. So again, I want to send just a large level of gratitude before I begin my prepared statements. So the reason we're here today, I just want to say I'm grateful for our state leadership, including Senator West, for releasing 2/3 of the third round of the federal funds intended for public schools. Of this initial $11.2 billion, nearly $362 million will go to support Dallas ISD, schools, students, teachers, and families, the same people I described at the beginning. The challenges that we faced as a community in recovering from COVID-19 pandemic have been formidable. We also had a tornado and many other, an ice storm. It's been an incredibly difficult year. So it will take an enormous effort and commitment to tackle learning loss, accelerate instruction for all of our kids, to confront the very real trauma that our students, educators, their families, myself have endured. But this week's release of funds is just a strong first down payment for us to be able to do just that. So we're grateful to Senator West for his tireless leadership, not only this session, but since I worked session with you many, many years ago, and advocacy for public education in the Texas Capitol, and ensuring these dollars flow to our public schools. Because of his hard work, this week's positive steps were possible. I want to thank Dr. Hinojosa for his leadership during this very difficult year, as I described before. Good policymaking and good leadership is the work of many hands. That includes all of the people who have been advocating for these federal dollars to be sent out to our public schools, parents, educators, students, superintendents, business leaders, and many more. I'm proud to have joined our legislative leaders as well as hundreds of fellow neighbors in directly speaking up and advocating for the federal dollars our children are owed. I'm deeply thankful for that. So we're encouraged by leadership's stated commitment to flow the remainder of the $5.5 billion under the federal funds, and we look forward in anticipation to the second round of dollars that will help keep our students and our family healthy and whole and continue to mitigate the learning loss that we've seen not only in DISD but across our state. So again, it's an honor to be here this day. I want to reiterate I'm incredibly thankful for what has happened at the state level to deliver these funds to our public schools, and look forward to working with everyone in this room to continue to advocate for the best of all of our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Henry, Senator West, Dr. Hinojosa, and Ms. Bachny for your remarks today. I'm Matthew Hall with Raise Your Hand Texas. And before we move to close today's press conference and move on to our media availability, I did want to now at this time open the floor to questions for any of our 4 speakers.
Yeah, we gave a brief overview to the school board a little bit at our last meeting, but we're going to go in further detail now so we can start taking action. First of all, we're adopting a non-traditional calendar, but that's only going to get to about 30 of our schools, and so that's not going to be enough. We're also going to take our 60 lowest performing schools, we call them high-priority campuses. Many of them got a B rating or C rating, competing, but they've been fragile in the past. So from 3 o'clock to 6 p.m., we're going to offer at every school an opportunity for the students to come back. We want the kids to say, Mom, don't pick me up at 3, pick me up at 6, because they're going to be bringing back their academics, but also we're going to have enrichment there so the students look forward to being there after school. And so that's the second thing. Another big thing is we're going to completely reinvent our summer school. And we have a short amount of time because we're finishing late. And then we're also doing a lot with our community partners. We're lucky to be in partnership with Big Thought and the Boys and Girls Club. And so we're going to make our summer as exciting as our after school. And all that is important. But that doesn't get to everybody. So we're going to have to change completely our core instructional program. And if you have a teacher who is teaching guiding reading, and now she's reading with 6 kids. Now with the technology, the devices, the curriculum, the connectivity that we have, our other students can be engaged in meaningful learning. But it's taken us a lot of resources to pay for that. And so we know, and the board has told us, we're not going to give you 3 years to get caught up. We need to have, with this loss, we need some results. And so we're going to have to change completely how we deal with. And also we're coming up with some creative things that my staff is very talented that we're going to do that's going to be new and different. But those are the 4 main areas of how we need to reinvent ourselves going forward so that our students have a fighting chance to be successful. In the meantime, we also have other partnerships that are helping us reinvent our libraries. Apple happens to be a partner that's going to help us with that. And we still have our what I'm really proud of, and I think we talked about it in the State of the District this week. You know, we had a tornado, we had a pandemic, and we had a snowmageddon. But our people didn't stop. They said, we got to deliver for our families. And a lot of our families are working class. They didn't have the luxury of working from an office or from home. And so we needed to move quickly. And I'm glad and I'm really proud of our educators for being courageous during these very difficult times. We didn't know what we didn't know. We know a lot more now, and things are getting better. But we're still not there. So there are a lot of significant heavy lifts that we're going to have for the next several months. Si vamos a trabajar con los padres de familia después de la escuela, de las 3 a las 6, que vamos a trabajar con los estudiantes que están más atrasados. También en el verano vamos a tener un programa nuevo para ellos. Y también algunas escuelas van a tener un calendario que es diferente, que van a ir a la escuela más días que normalmente lo hacen. Y también vamos a cambiar todo lo como comenzamos en la instrucción para los estudiantes. También con el Apple nos están ayudando con una escuela nueva. También en las bibliotecas de todas las escuelas nos van a ayudar a cambiar cómo se operan esas bibliotecas. Thank you. Any other questions?
I've heard several people over the past couple of days talk about trying to get that last third of the money. But when you talk to the state leaders, they say they couldn't give it all to you now. It was a requirement. Is that the case?
Well, there's some complications here, so let me try to be as simple as I can. ESSER 1, which is also the CARES Act, helped us fund House Bill 3. You see this 3-legged stool back here. So that was part of it. So they used part of those dollars, but those were very indirect. We got $8 million from the city of Dallas for our Operation Connectivity. That was ESSER 1. ESSER 2 was the second tranche of money that was passed under the previous administration. Well, they were given another year to deliver those funds. So those are the funds that are still being held up. There's a technical glitch that only Senator West can explain because he's down there every day about how higher ed is involved in that and some kind of maintenance of effort that is required on that. So that's what complicates that bucket of money. That buck.
I meant the 18 billion in the stimulus money.
Yeah, well,
1/3 of that.
Well, and that is the ESSER 3. We're getting 2/3 of it now. They're going to distribute, my understanding, the other third later. We're going to get it. It's just not all now. We couldn't spend all of that. That's required, and it was also by the new administration said it's required to be distributed within 60 days that you get it. So that's why that money is moving faster. ESSER 3 is moving faster than ESSER 2. Senator West, you need to correct anything I said?
The commissioner, I'm sorry.
I got a good job.
Superintendent is exactly right. The money is coming. Okay, there's a maintenance of efforts issues that we're dealing with right now that will ultimately be resolved. And I'm being very vague about that because there's negotiations that are going on. But the money is coming, and we'll make certain that we get it to the school districts throughout Texas, specifically the Dallas Independent School District.
Yeah, it's just the governor's statement was that I cannot release that last third because I am required not to.
I heard his statement, I read his statement, but as I said, there are negotiations that are going on. Okay. All right. Is there any?
Also talk a little bit about, to use Dr. Hinojos' term, the clog. I mean, we know the money's been there, and we know you worked to get it released. What was the clog?
Let me say this. This has been a joint effort between Democrats and Republicans. Yes, we have our red meat issues, guns, okay? But the reality is that the state had to make certain that it would be able to comply with the guidelines, maintenance of efforts issues, and be able to make certain that they didn't do anything inconsistent with the guidelines that have been promulgated by the federal government for expenditures of these funds, which I think is part of due diligence, okay? And they've now done their due diligence, and other issues have been worked out, and so we now have the $18 billion that's flowing.
Thank you, Senator West and Dr. Hinojosa. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we will move to, if there are no other questions, we'll move to go ahead and conclude today's press conference. I'd like to once again thank all four of our speakers that have joined us today. And a reminder for media present, we have many community leaders here present with us today, and there will be a media availability to engage with them upon the conclusion of this press conference. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining us.
Jeff.